am terrible. Yeah.
Medieval slang.
They say we in the end, right? It's time to shed light. Listen, y'all, I'm not of this world, pleading to make it into his paradise. When you die, that ain't it more to live in the after. Life. The serpent lied to us, nature made for deception, and some may quest to search far beyond comprehension. Been indoctrinated, whether free or incarcerated. The planned agenda for masculine be eradicated. Killing of each other, drugs, women, and murders. Too soon looking around for man, something unheard of. Times perilous, homicides cause of prejudice. Domestic terrorists abusing power in uniform. Praise the Lord, I'm in rare form. Never follow the common norm. My eyes wide open and tune what's going on. Sands running in the time closing, power shifting, and it's coming fast. Evil never lasts to the lake eternally cast. When the wicked disappear in a blink when lightning flash. See to feel what I feel. If you feel it, know this. This is real. Ain't coming every evil meal. If you feel it, know this is real. This is real. You ain't gotta see to feel what I feel. If you feel it, know this is real. This is real. Ain't coming every evil meal. If you feel it, know this is real. It's real. Short-lived little season, soon over. No more running loose. Bound ain't no truth with the weak ones you seduce. It's war here. Internal and flesh warfare. Won't make it through to the end. You doubt, so fear. This world don't care. Nothing but lust, other eyes. Anything opposing their lives, highly despised. Scam, hustle, connive, backstab full of knives.
Peace, peace, salute, 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 salute. We are live, we are live, we are live, we are live. Give it a quick second. We are live, continuing on with Faces of the Agendas. Coming in an hour earlier than normal. 1 hour earlier than normal. Gonna rock out about the same time, but yeah. All right, let's get into it. Continuing on with Faces of the Agendas. Agendas plural because they are various agendas. Okay. I touched on this briefly before, but I'll go a little today. This is in regards to Event 201. Event 201. The Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, in partnership with the World Economic Forum. So by now, if you've been following the series, you know who's one of the other faces of the agenda, of the agendas. Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation hosted Event 201. Bill Gates is another face of the agendas, along with his wife, Mel Gates. And interesting enough, we're going to go through some information on Bill Gates tonight with presenting the information and leaving it for you to make your decision based on the information that's presented to show you the mindset of this individual and what's embedded in him. So this thing that was put together by the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security in partnership with the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, hosted Event 201, a high-level pandemic exercise on October 18th, 2019. Just pay attention to the dates. In New York City, New York, the exercise illustrated areas where public/private partnerships will be necessary during the response to a severe, pandemic in order to diminish large-scale economic consequences. In recent years, the world has seen a growth number of epidemic events, amounting to approximately 200 events annually. These events are increasing, and they are disruptive in health, economies, and society. Managing these events already strains global capacity, even absent a pandemic threat. Experts agree that it is only a matter of time before one of these epidemics becomes global, a pandemic with potentially catastrophic consequences, a severe pandemic, which becomes Event 201, would require reliable cooperation among several industries, national governments, and key international institutions. So if you're paying attention to the date, it's very close to coincidentally, I'm being very facetious, but coincidentally was COVID-19. How ironic. And this is something that's been spoken about for years by Bill Gates, and the potential of there being a pandemic that can kill tens of millions of people. And an event was held as a quote unquote exercise. And I'll be playing some of the video later, showing you how they did mock news broadcasts and all kind of stuff. And then coincidentally, not too far, a few months later, COVID-19 hit. It was all an exercise. It was all a drill. It was all a test. So let's continue on. About the Event 201 exercise. Event 201 was a 3 to 5 hour pandemic tabletop exercise that simulated a series of dramatic scenario-based facilitated discussions. My eyes, it got, the 40 eyes, as they say, as you get older. Confronting difficult true-to-life dilemmas associated with response to a hypothetical but scientifically plausible pandemic. 15 global businesses, government, and public health leaders were players in the simulation exercise that highlighted unresolved real-world policy and economic issues that could be solved with sufficient political will, financial investment, and attention now and in the future. The exercise consisted of pre-recorded news broadcasts, live staff briefings, and moderated discussions of specific topics. These issues were carefully designed in a compelling narrative that educated the participants and the audience. The Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, World Economic Forum, and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation jointly proposed these recommendations. So everything that we see that happened and that came about, everything that we see and that happened during the time of the quote unquote pandemic was based on these exercises, and everything that followed was based on their recommendations. So let that sink in. It's based on their recommendations. Let's continue on. Let's continue on. Oh, not this one. Excuse me. Hold on 1 second. Not that one. Okay, here we go. There we go. All right. Okay. So this is the quote unquote purpose, the rationalizing of why they came up with this quote unquote event. In recent years, the world has seen a growing number of epidemic events amounting to approximately 200 events annually. These events are increasing and they are disruptive to health, economies, and society. Managing these events already strains global capacity, even absent a pandemic threat. Experts agree it is only a matter of time before one of these epidemics becomes global. So again, it's reiterating what was already mentioned in the 4-1. Recent economic studies show that the pandemic will be the cause of an average annual economic loss of 0.7% of global GDP, or $570 billion. The players' responses to the scenario illuminated the need for cooperation among industry, national governments, key international institutions, and civil society to avoid the catastrophic consequences that could arise from a large-scale pandemic. So again, they put the truth right in your face and play with you and say that that's not what it is. It's not what you see. Because they will argue and say that that's not what Event 201 was about. It was about seeing what to do should that situation ever happen. And ironically, coincidentally, a few months later, it happened. And this is not the first time they've done these events. Similar to the center's 3 previous exercises, Clade X, Dark Winter, and Atlantic Storm. Event 201 aimed to educate senior leaders at the highest level of U.S. and international governments and leaders in global industries. It is also a tool to inform members of the policy and preparedness communities and the general public. This is distinct from many other forms of simulation exercises that test protocols and technical policies of a specific organization. Exercises similar to Event 201 are a particularly effective way to help policymakers gain a fuller understanding of the urgent challenges they could face in a dynamic real-world crisis. And then they paint the scenario. So again, I'm showing in this episode here, Faces of the Agendas, how there's a bunch of faces behind these agendas that are for these agendas that are conspired, that have been conspiring. To implement these things on the population. So the recommendations, they said, was the following: the next severe pandemic will not only cause great illness and loss of life, but could also trigger major cascading economic and societal consequences that could contribute greatly to global impact and suffering. The Event 201 pandemic exercise conducted on October 18, 2019 vividly demonstrated a number of these important gaps in pandemic preparedness, as well as some of the elements of the solutions between the public and private sectors that will be needed to fill them. The Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, World Economic Forum, and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation jointly proposed these recommendations. All right. Where we at? So this was the ad for it. Friday, October 18th, 2019, from 8:45 to 12:30 p.m. The Pierre Hotel in New York, in Manhattan. An invitation-only audience of nearly 130 people attended. And I have footage of it to go through in a little bit, but I'm trying to do what I do. Again, if you believe, praise God. If you don't, praise God. You have your liberty. I'm just presenting the information and presenting pieces of the puzzle. And it's up to you to see the picture or not. If you see it, praise God. If you don't, praise God. You have your liberty. You have your freedom. Okay, let me see what this is here. All right. January 24th, 2020. In October 2019. So when you read this, you can read this and basically make their claim that they're not predicting anything in regards to what's going on with the coronavirus, and exactly around the time when it starts being known. So quickly to, no, it's not what you see. Because it's a magic spell. It's not what you see. Spells, illusions, is not what you see. So advertise on the World Economic Forum because they're partners. They have a partnership, right? All right. I got one more for you. I'm gonna leave that there for a second as I get ready for these clips. It's quite a few clips. Before I get to the clips, I'm gonna go into some information with one of the faces of the agendas, which is Bill Gates. Very interesting individual, Bill Gates. A good friend of mine said he reminds me of one of the quote unquote nerds that was bullied, and as they got older and they got rich, their smarts they used for evil, to come up with evil to get revenge for the way they was treated in life. And he does have that vibe to him. So let's get into it. Let's get into it. Let me get this next batch ready. And let's get into it. Okay. Excuse me. So we start here for a reason. We start here for a reason. And this book is available. I guess they have it on different sites. Speaking about what she was about and the project that she had, which is really called exactly what the book says, the Negro Project. Margaret Sanger. You can look this up online. Hillary Clinton has praised her and said she is one of her heroes. She is one of her heroes. Interesting character, this woman. So the Negro Project, conceptualized by birth control activist Margaret Sanger and implemented by the Birth Control Federation of America, now Planned Parenthood Federation of America. So I'll leave that there. You can read the rest. And you see that this is something that she came up with. It's her concept. This woman, Margaret Sanger. What does she have to do with Bill Gates? A lot. A whole lot. Bill Gates' father, William Gates Sr., was one of the chair members of the board of directors for Planned Parenthood. Time magazine did a piece on her as well. You can look that up. You can look that up and you'll see for yourself that William Gates Sr., Bill Gates' father, sat on the board of directors for Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood was designed for quote unquote birth control, but in reality for population control. That's the whole concept of it. They are eugenics. They believe they deal with eugenics and they are eugenists, which basically means that they have the idea of selective breeding, meaning you're not supposed to mix races and things of that nature. And certain breeds of people, to them, are more powerful and more quote unquote ideal, as we read on with the rest of the clips. So this is something that you can see is clearly embedded in Bill Gates. This is why he operates how he operates. Everything about him is about population control. And he says things that you have to rewind and scratch your head. Did he really just say that? Was it a fraudulent slip? And even if it was, he slipped and he spoke the truth. But that's the whole premise of everything he speaks on. It's always about quote unquote health and population control. But we're going to get to that. So Time magazine, they did an article They did a piece on her. Oh, you making this up? Again, I'm just presenting the information. You can check it for yourself. And you have your freedom. You have your liberty. So let's read. This is from Time Magazine. And if you want to get this article, if you want to get it, they have an archives and on Time Magazine site. On their site, they have an archives, and you can go and get this, and you can see. This is an exact article from them. It was 100 years ago on October 16, 1916, that Margaret Sanger opened the first birth control clinic in the United States, an advocate for women's reproductive rights, who was also a vocal eugenics enthusiast. Margaret Sanger leaves a complicated legacy, and one that conservatives have periodically leveraged into sweeping attacks on the organization she helped found, Planned Parenthood. Last year, 25 House Republicans campaigned to have a bust of the pioneering family planner removed from Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery, where it has been included in an exhibit featuring American civil rights leaders called The Struggle for Justice, with Ted Cruz's office issuing a press release explaining that she didn't belong there for a number of reasons, the most damning of which is that as part of her inhumane life's work, she advocated for the extermination of African Americans. It's not the first time Sanger has faced this accusation. During this past primary season, Ben Carson proclaimed that Sanger believed that people like me should be eliminated. Later clarifying per PolitiFact that he was talking about the black race, and in 2011, Herman Cain alleged that Sanger's original goal for Planned Parenthood was to help kill black babies before they came into the world. The things that these gentlemen mentioned, Ben Carson, Herman Cain, are facts, where you have Ted Cruz's office explaining why she didn't belong there. So there's different politicians that have voiced themselves in regards to this woman, Margaret Sanger. So this information is correct, is factual, is not a myth, is not a theory, but it is an actual conspiracy. It is not a theory, but it is an actual conspiracy. And it's no wonder that, again, Bill Gates is the way that he is, because his dad sat on the board of directors. He had a chair, Planned Parenthood. So let's continue on. The American eugenics movement was rooted in the biological determinist ideas of Sir Francis Galton. In the 1880s. In 1883, Galton first used the word eugenics to describe scientifically the biological improvement of genes in human races and the concept of being well born. He believed that differences in a person's ability were acquired primarily through genetics, and that eugenics can be implemented through selective breeding in order for the human race to improve in its overall quality, therefore allowing for humans to direct their own evolution. So as you read on, that's what eugenics is about. And the whole premise behind Margaret Sanger and whatever other, because that's what happens. So let's continue. So this was an article in USA Today back in 2020. all across America, video of activists attacking statues plays on a loop while some political leaders voice their support for removing all reminders of people whose personal histories put them in a negative light, and asking for the U.S. Capitol to be cleansed of Confederate statues. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and said they must go because their efforts were to achieve such a plainly racist end. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo said on NBC's Today show that removing statues is a healthy expression of priorities and values. And she comes up. For those identifying historical figures with racist roots who should be removed from public view of their evil histories, Planned Parenthood's founder, Margaret Sanger, must join that list. In promoting birth control, she advanced a controversial Negro project, wrote in her autobiography about speaking the Ku Klux Klan group, and advocated for a eugenics approach to breeding for the gradual suppression, elimination, and eventual extinction of defective stocks, those human weeds which threaten the blooming of the finest flowers of American civilization. And who was she speaking about? What the gentleman said, Herman Cain, Ben Carson. It was about Black people. Hence, the Negro Project. Sanger's Planned Parenthood mission in 1939. In a 1939 letter to Dr. C.J. Gamble, Sanger urged him to get over his reluctance to hire a full-time Negro physician, as the colored Negroes can get closer to their own members and more or less lay their cards on the table, which means their ignorance, superstitions, and doubt. Which basically is saying, get Black people that hate their own people to convince them to do this, to help her mission. Like the abortion lobby today, Sanger urged Dr. Gamble to enlist the help of spiritual leaders to justify their deadly work, writing, we do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. And the minister is the man who can straighten out the idea if it occurs to any of their more rebellious members. This is from an article written back in 2020 in USA Today. And that's her ties to Bill Gates. That's her ties to him. And that's his ties to her through his father. So now that gives better insight on why he is the way he is. So let's look at this. Let's get this clip going. Hold on a second. Let me get this ready. Here we go. All right. Just listen to him.
Okay, this is a very important question to get right, because It was absolutely key for me. When our foundation first started up, it was focused on reproductive health. That was the main thing we did because I thought, you know, population growth in poor countries is the biggest problem they face. You've got
reproduction health is not just abortion, but also contraceptives and things of that nature. Keep in mind the value of the organs. Remember, we went through that with the other billionaire, Peter Nygaard, and what the organs mean and the value of those organs. The eggs of the woman's reproductive system. Let's keep that in mind. These are billionaires. It's all a part of the agendas.
Got to help mothers who want to limit family size have the tools and education to do that. And I thought that's the only thing that really counts. Well, then I came across articles that showed that the key thing you can do to reduce population growth is actually improve health. And that sounds paradoxical. You think, okay, better health means more kids, not less kids. Well, in fact,
that's because all the different vaccines and medications and things that they're implementing and giving is causing the death. That's clear. It's causing the death. How is it people are perfectly healthy? They don't have no sickness at all. But as soon as they get this injection, they get sick and possibly die. It doesn't make sense. Not one bit.
What parents are doing is they're trying to have 2 kids survive to adulthood to take care of them. And so the more disease burden there is, the more kids they have to have that high probability. So there's a perfect correlation that as you improve health, within a half generation, the population growth rate goes down. In fact, Hans Rosling here at this conference, in 2 of my favorite speeches, actually showed that unbelievable correlation that population growth has gone down. Today, where is there high population growth? It's in the places with the worst health conditions, northern Nigeria, northern India. And so the 2 problems go exactly hand in hand. If we improve health rapidly, we will get the peak population to be as much as 1 billion below the current expected peak. That is about 8.3 billion versus 9.3.
Let's get the next one. Okay. Get the next one lined up for y'all. So just listen to the slick talk. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's how the elite look at us. As chattel, as cattle. You can do whatever you want. That's exactly how they look at us. All right. Let's get this next one up. Got y'all ready right now.
Today, the greatest risk of global catastrophe doesn't look like this. Instead, it looks like this. If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus.
Look at the
rather
year.
than a war. Now, part of the reason for this is that we have invested a huge amount in nuclear deterrence, but we've actually invested very little in a system to stop an epidemic. We're not ready for the next epidemic. The failure to prepare could allow the next epidemic to be dramatically more devastating than Ebola. The best lessons, I think, on how to get prepared are, again, what we do for war. We need a medical reserve corps, lots of people who've got the training and background who are ready to go with the expertise. And then we need to pair those medical people with the military, taking advantage of the military's ability to move fast, do logistics, and secure areas. We need to do simulations, germ games, not war games, so that we see where the holes are. Finally, we need lots of advanced R&D in areas of vaccines and diagnostics. There are some big breakthroughs, like the adeno-associated virus, that could work very, very quickly. Now, I don't have an exact budget for what this would cost, but I'm quite sure it's very modest compared to the potential harm. The World Bank estimates that if we have a worldwide flu epidemic, global wealth will go down by over $3 trillion, and we'd have millions and millions of deaths. If we start now, we can be ready for the next epidemic. Thank you.
2015. 2015. And then when it happened, hold on one second, y'all. Hold on one second. This is a serious one. This is a serious one right here. All right. It's right when it happened, and it's being spoken of. This is serious.
We're in a live exercise here to get this right. We're in a live exercise here to get this right. We're in a live exercise here to get this right.
You heard it for yourself. This was right when the situation happened with the quote unquote pandemic. It was right when it happened. He said, we're in a live exercise. And the president said at that time, I wish you would have told us. I wish you would have told us. Well, this is the exercise that became reality, that really turned into what took place.
It began in healthy-looking pigs, months, perhaps years ago. A new coronavirus spread silently within herds. Gradually, farmers started getting sick.
Keep in mind, this is supposed to be an exercise, like a game. Not war games, but germ games, like the mad scientist said. But it's already called coronavirus.
Infected people got a respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia. The sickest required intensive care. Many died. Experts agree, unless it is quickly controlled, it could lead to a severe pandemic, an outbreak that circles the globe and affects people everywhere.
The mission of the Pandemic Emergency Board is to provide recommendations to deal with the major global challenges arising in response to an unfolding pandemic. The board is comprised of highly experienced leaders from business, public health, and civil society.
We could be looking at double the number of cases in 1 week, and 16 times as many in a month if we are not able to stop the spread. That would be on the order of 500,000 cases, and it would continue to rise exponentially. In 3 months, we could be approaching 10 million cases.
We're at the start of what's looking like it will be a severe pandemic. And there are problems emerging that can only be solved by global business and governments working together.
We have known about caps-like viruses in animals and people for decades, but have not been successful at developing a licensed vaccine. And sure, there are new technologies that may help, but it's going to be difficult. I am not optimistic about having a vaccine in time to be relevant during this pandemic.
So the policy crisis in question for this board in this meeting is this: how should governments, business, and international organizations allocate and distribute pandemic antivirals and medical supplies to the people who need them most?
What we've seen work very well in the HIV field is, in fact, procurement through the Global Fund. So having a centralized mechanism, so financially able to procure on behalf of affected countries is critical. I think the second thing is it's going to be very important that for the business sector, for manufacturers of antivirals, that we have clarity around what the need is and where the need is and who are making the decisions.
I think that given that the countries most affected are those that are low and middle income countries with unequal access to technology, to finances, the UN has a worldwide footprint, universally recognized, and universal membership.
A global stockpile would certainly help ensure more rational and strategic allocation, but the reality is that we don't have the logistics capability, even within the UN, to bring that together in one place and run it. So this is where I think a collaboration between the international organizations like the World Health Organization and the private sector, which runs these supply chains for many purposes every day, understand where the supplies are, make smart decisions about how to allocate them to the people who need them in the places that need them the most, and then work with the industry to move those supplies from where they are today to where they need to be.
Just to underscore the point that cooperation among supply chain providers or businesses, huge supply chains, can add a lot of efficiency to the whole process.
The question is, can you, through this international mechanism, really promote commitments to doing this as quickly as possible and give people a sense that actually if they contribute more, that they will have a better chance of protecting their own populations and their country's security and health.
So to be completely clear, most of this production would already be committed in contracts.
Yes.
It is almost unheard of that people are producing product without having a forward commitment for the consumption of that product. So the first thing that needs to be done, because this is not something that countries currently
cannot
control,
play games without the bankers.
about emergency situations and co-opt an existing supply chain.
I think it's not likely. I agree that countries are not going to buy countermeasure to put into a global supply without retaining a large portion of it for themselves.
Public health agencies have issued travel advisories, while some countries have banned travel from the worst affected areas. As a result, the travel sector is taking a huge hit. Travel bookings are down 45%, and many flights have been canceled. A ripple effect is racing through the service sector. Governments that rely on travel and tourism as a large part of their economies are being hit particularly hard.
How should national leaders, businesses, and international organizations balance the risk of a worsening disease that will be caused by the continued movement of people around the world against the risks of profound economic consequence of travel and trade bans?
If there's some sense that there's a UN institution that can do all of this, then I worry we're suffering from a delusional disorder on the power of the UN. It's really important to get those industries and their trade associations and an efficient leadership established, which is decentralized, but has a collective responsibility and accountability. And that needs to be supported by the public leadership.
what is essential, what is non-essential travel. We have to clarify this. Otherwise, if we go down to 20% bookings over a long period, the company will run down. That's a fact.
You know, there's a whole complex set of issues in a highly interdependent world on supply chains that are just in time. We need to think about how much flex there is in that just-in-time supply chain system and make sure it keeps running. I think it's going to take specificity, and it's going to take knowledge that only the private sector has. The UN can play an important coordinating facilitation role, but the companies know where those commodities are, where they move, how to move them. And that's where a type of public-private collaboration that we have not generally had in these crises needs to be put together pretty quickly.
We are not out of money yet. But the fact is we are trending in a dangerous direction and something needs to change.
So the policy question for this board now is how should financial resources be prioritized? Are there nodes that we cannot allow to fail? What is your sense of priorities? We don't have money to pay for all of these urgent problems.
So at the moment, we want the fund, right? You need the money. So where's the money? So government kind of supplies some money. A lot of, private sectors, some are sitting here, you have some money, but now you need a really coordinated, centralized efforts.
Hotels will be experiencing, crippling losses doing that. And we know that the hotel business in itself makes up 5% of the GDP.
Governments need to be willing to do things that are out of their historical perspective, or for the most part, it's really a war footing that we need to be on.
We shouldn't underestimate the power of entrepreneurship. We need to escalate that, whether it's through the government's helping with tax breaks or subsidies of that nature to increase manufacturing of those types of products. It can happen quickly. A Marshall type plan, don't mean to say that exactly, but a Marshall plan that can go into effect and stimulate change very quickly.
Countries are reacting in different ways as to how best to manage the overwhelming amounts of and misinformation circulating over the internet. In some cases, limited internet shutdowns are being implemented to quell panic.
So this was already quote unquote predicted of what was going to come, how people was going to say different quote unquote conspiracies of how it started or where it started. So, and any plans behind it or so forth and so on, has to cover their tracks.
How much control of information should there be, and by whom? And how can false information be effectively challenged? And what if that false information is coming from companies or from governments?
I think it's very important that we make sure that there is concise communication with all healthcare facilities where these patients are being treated so that there isn't mass panic.
We're at a moment where the social media platforms have to step forward and recognize the moment to assert that they're a technology platform and not a broadcaster is over. They, in fact, have to be a participant in broadcasting accurate information and partnering with the scientific and health communities to counterweight, if not flood the zone of accurate information, because to try to put the genie back in the bottle of the misinformation and disinformation is nigh impossible.
One thing we haven't spoken about, and I'm wondering whether it's time to talk about this, is a step up from the part of the governments on enforcement actions against fake news.
I personally do not believe that trying to shut things down is either practical or desirable. And we do have, I think, a couple of strategies that are available to us, one of which is the flood strategy, second of which is relying and informing and equipping trusted sources of information with the facts so they can then pass that on. But we also need to actually think about a technological answer to this.
The outcome of the CAPS pandemic in Event 201 was catastrophic. 65 million people died in the first 18 months. The outbreak was small at first and initially seemed controllable, but then it started spreading in densely crowded and impoverished neighborhoods of megacities. From that point on, the spread of the disease was explosive. Within 6 months, cases were occurring in nearly every country. The global economy was in a free fall. The GDP down 11%. Stock markets around the world plummeted between 20 and 40% and headed into a downward cycle of fear and low expectation. Businesses were not borrowing, banks were not lending. Everyone was just hoping to hunker down and weather the storm. Economists say the economic turmoil caused by such a pandemic will last for years, perhaps a decade. The societal impacts, the loss of faith in government, the distrust of news, and the breakdown of social cohesion could last even longer. We have to ask, did this need to be so bad? Are there things we could have done in the 5 to 10 years leading up to the pandemic that would have lessened the catastrophic consequences? We believe the answer is yes. So, are we as a global community now finally ready to do the hard work needed to prepare for the next pandemic?
Are you prepared? Wow. Let's see this one. Let me get this lined up for y'all. Here we go.
Events that Greetings, distinguished guests, and thank you for this opportunity to say a few words at this year's event 201, the high-level simulation exercise for pandemic preparedness and response, hosted by Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, the World Economic Forum, and the Bill and Melinda.
Just a quick sidebar. If you look at the logo for the World Health Organization, you see it's the same as the United Nations logo, and you see it's a flat earth map. Put it in your face. They put it in your face all the time, and people are arguing about a ball.
The Gates Foundation. Unfortunately, I was not able to join you today. I'm involved in the IHR Emergency Committee for Ebola, but I had hoped to be in the room with you because the issues you will be dealing with over the next hours may be tabletop exercises today, but they address real and critical threats, which we at WHO take very seriously. Without a question, epidemic risk has become a global strategic concern. I don't think we've ever been in a situation where we have had to respond to so many health emergencies at once. This is a new normal. I don't expect the frequency of these epidemics to reduce, and in fact, vulnerabilities all over the world, developed and developing countries, have increased, not decreased, driven by many, many factors, mainly through human behavior, economic development, population density, and many others. The scenario you will be presented with this morning could easily become one shared reality one day. I fully expect that we will be confronted by a fast-moving, highly lethal pandemic of respiratory pathogen. Question is, are we prepared to globally respond to the next major pandemic event? Are we ready to cooperate and perform across countries and across sectors to face such a threat? Have we established the surveillance and risk assessment systems, the communication tools, the supply chains, and the business continuity plans that will be needed not only to protect health in a major epidemic or pandemic, but to protect economic development, to protect political and social systems? Do we collectively drive innovation enough to face the evolving global threats which we are anticipating? The nature of pandemics is that many countries will be affected at the same time. This is particularly true with the respiratory pathogen, as they are often transmitted by asymptomatic persons. They spread fast. In 2009, the pandemic virus reached all continents in less than 9 weeks. WHO's priorities are to establish a minimum capacity to detect and respond in each country around the world, to develop global strategies for the containment and control of individual disease threats, and develop global mechanisms to ensure cross-sectoral and multinational, multilateral coordination. Innovation and partnership across all sectors are needed, including joint strategies between global health leaders and the drivers of travel, communication, data technology industries. WHO is working at all levels through a variety of partnerships to strengthen national and regional preparedness, such as GORN, the Global Outbreak Alert and Response Network. Through the PIP framework, adopted by WHO member states in 2011, WHO has secured 400 million vaccine doses for influenza, 10 million.
That's what it's all about. They want everybody injected. That's what it's all about.
Antiviral treatments and 250,000 diagnostic kits for the next pandemic. We have completed external evaluations of surveillance and response systems in over 100 countries and carried out more than 50 simulation exercises at country level, looking for vulnerabilities and weaknesses in national systems. This voluntary, collaborative, multi-sectoral process helps countries to assess their capacities and identifies the most critical gaps within their health systems in order to prioritize opportunities for enhanced preparedness and response. The Pandemic Supply Chain Network, part of the Epidemic Readiness Accelerator, which is a project of the World Economic Forum in partnership with many, including WHO. It's a public-private collaboration to develop a globally connected supply chain that can support health emergency operations during a pandemic. Stakeholders consist of product manufacturers to logistics providers, distributors, and UN partners, including ourselves. Michael Griffin is WHO's focal point for the Pandemic Supply Chain Network, and he is there with you this week. Constant innovation and the use of cutting-edge technology is key to pandemic preparedness. In order to pool data and analytics at a global scale for disease prevention, the EpiBrain initiative, a global data ecosystem, aims to build a collaboration of big data networks to understand and predict epidemics. It supports data science, innovation for outbreak preparedness and response. Despite this progress, there is still much to be done. Cross-sectoral simulation exercises, such as the one you will be experiencing today, contribute to a better understanding of the critical gaps, the cooperation required from global businesses, response decisions required from government and public health leaders to minimize large-scale economic and societal consequences of a severe pandemic. I wish you the best of luck, and we are looking forward to working with each of you to strengthen pandemic preparedness in the future. Thank you.
So that's what it's all about. Which one is this? Okay, yeah, this is it. Got two more. No, this ain't it. This ain't it. I got two more for you. Hold on. Or one more, actually. One more.
These epidemic events are getting more and more disruptive to health and to economy. And the reason we called it Event 201 is we knew eventually one of these days, one of those events would be the big one. And that big one would really challenge our capacity to respond. And to respond to the big one, we do need to have all hands on deck. participants are confronted by a hypothetical scenario that presents to them the challenges of a response. So we will say, here's a hypothetical disease outbreak. This is the way it might be evolving. And these are some of the challenges that you'll see that you'll have to address to address the disruptions that you're seeing to your healthcare.
Did you hear him say, so we made one up? Did you read? So they made one up? And not too long in that future, it happened.
Care system or to your organization.
Let me go back a little bit.
To your organization. All stakeholders realize pretty quickly just how underprepared we are and just how much is possible when we work together. And that the individual actions of any government or company won't add up to a proper global response. I think if we're honest with ourselves, collectively, the international community has never done enough to respond to global health security challenges. That we knew before COVID that the world was underprepared for biological risk. When we walked into the room in New York, if you would have asked, do you think the world is prepared for a pandemic? I think everyone around that table would have said no. But it's when they walked out, I think it's when we really knew that if we are going to get ready, we need to have operationalized and integrated public-private cooperation that we haven't seen before.
Yeah. So that's from the actual site. And they really insult our intelligence. They really feel and know, to them, they really believe that we are really stupid. That's how they look at humanity. It's clear what they want to do. There's too much evidence that shows that it's clearly about reducing population. It's clear and evident. And it's clear that they really think that we're stupid. So again, I'm just presenting the information. That's all I'm doing. It's from their own mouth, from their own organizations. It's not people on the sideline saying it. They're saying it. They're actually saying it. I feel like I have another one. Give me a second. I may have another one. I thought I had another one, but don't. Yeah. Well, nevertheless, that's faces of the agendas. I might have a third or a fourth, but I don't know if I'll be continuing it with that in this chronological order. I think I might touch on something else next week. But you seeing the pieces of the puzzle, how they connected. If you go back to the very first video up until where we are right now, everything has been lining up. The connections, the different agendas, population control, bringing in the agenda of you can be whatever it is you want to be. There's so many things that are being pushed that directly go against the Bible. I wonder why. I really wonder why. I mean, I have the answers. I'm saying that I'm just, you know. Do you know why? We've been lied to so much. They lied about so much and continue to lie about so much. Like the information presented tonight. It'd be right in front of your face. And you hear it yourself. And you dismiss it. Nevertheless, all I'm doing is just presenting the information. That's it. I understand that some people see, but they don't see. Some people hear, but they don't hear. I get it. That's why you have your freedom. Everybody has free choice. You have your freedom. You have your freedom. But I'm anticipating some other points. As you can see, is all these different topics, though they're different, they all connect. It's a story. Everything connects as a story. And there's so many layers to it. As to the reason why you have people that are evilly minded like that create such a thing called the Negro Project with the idea to exterminate and target a particular people to get rid of them. Is the story behind this that's being painted with these different topics. And I'm going to continue with them. There's a lot. And all it's doing is connecting the dots. If you see it, praise God. If you don't, praise God. Everyone has their liberty. Everyone has their freedom. So with that, I say peace, Godspeed to next week. Those that tuned in, I appreciate you. Salute. Godspeed to you all. And be back next week with another one. It's a lot of information, a whole lot. And I'm actually waiting for, the availability of a couple of brothers that I would love to have on here and build with and go over some of these topics. and hopefully soon, especially to go into with evidence and proof certain things biblically that would label the average quote unquote Christian, a heretic or, someone that's crazy or what have you. But yeah, there's some interesting topics coming. So with that, I say peace, salute, much love, and Godspeed. Peace.